everybody. This is Pastor Brady Henderson, the senior pastor of the First Baptist Church in Gaston, South Carolina, located in the beautiful Midlands of the greatest state in the Union. And I am here today with Alan Ott, our co-host of the Menorah Podcast. Say hey to him, Al.
Hey, guys. How are we doing today?
For those that might be tuning in for the first time, this is our 37th episode. We began in February earlier this year, and it has flown by. But the Menorah Podcast is a ministry of First Baptist Church of Gaston. And our purpose is to seek the light, share the light, and send the light of Jesus Christ all across the airwaves of the internet. And Alan, we are here on episode 37. I had a really good time being interviewed by you last week on my recent commentary on 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 15. And I get to be interviewed by you again on something called Pastor Appreciation Month. That's a very interesting topic.
I was hoping you would say you had enjoyed that because we were going to do it again, whether you enjoyed it or not. Sometimes it can be unsettling. Most of the time, Pastor Brady leads these, and oftentimes we kind of discussed what we're going to talk about, but it's usually pretty vague as to exactly what questions I will have to field. And so
we don't write them down. Let me put a disclaimer there. There are no notes.
Sometimes I'll take notes as he's talking because I just don't remember things as well as a younger mind does. So October is traditionally the month that we celebrate or observe Pastor Appreciation, and it's simply a time for us as a congregation to say thank you to our pastors, make them feel remembered. They do an awful lot of work that we don't really see all the time. On top of the things they do that we don't see, they are constantly in prayer for us and our interactions as we deal with things that are going on in our lives. And so I just want to ask you, what do you, in terms of pastor appreciation, I guess, what do you appreciate most when people thank you for things? And how does that reflect upon your day?
I think number one, prayer. I can never have enough prayer. And not just prayer for me, but my wife. I think that's really, really important. So that's a big deal. And then also, I think I appreciate it, and I don't mean this ugly. I think I appreciate it the most when the way people treat their pastor in October when it bleeds throughout the whole year. Because I'll just be honest with you, that's not always the case. And it's like anything. It's like anything. Mother's Day, we treat our mothers great that week after, week before, and then after that it's back to normal. It's the same kind of thing with other things. And I think that is the same. I think for me, when it comes to pastor appreciation, I appreciate the prayer, but I also appreciate that you always remember that I am human too. And I think it's easy to view pastors as, and I grew up doing it, and I've got pastors that I've texted this month, that I've sent gifts this month, because I have pastors too. In the environment I grew up in, and I think most of our listeners would agree, pastors were viewed as this superhero figure, and a lot of people still view them as that. I think they need to be respected. I think that's one thing that we do appreciate for pastor appreciation is that you respect the office that we hold. You respect the title that we hold. Sometimes that gets negated throughout the year. And overall, respecting the fact that, hey, we don't see all that you do, but we know that it's not just when you're at the church. If that makes sense. Like, if I see your truck there, great, you're probably working on a sermon. But even if I don't see your truck there, you might be ministering to somebody that I will never know about. Because I'll tell you this, Alan, and I think you know this about me, I'm not going to broadcast to the world that I made 15 hospital visits in 1 week. I'm not going to broadcast that. I'm not going to broadcast that I counseled X amount of people and their issues are all I think about all weekend. I'm not going to divulge that. I'm not going to discuss that because, number one, it's not about me. I think as you honor your pastor, you honor God. I think that's a very biblical concept because God has put the pastor in the position that he's in. And if any pastor is truly called by God, it's not because that man wanted that position. It's not like he woke up one day and said, I'm going to be a pastor and I can't wait. That's not how it goes. I think I speak for a lot of pastors and we desire to be normal, but we can't be. And I think that can be very difficult.
Yeah, I want to go back to that word respect.
Okay,
A
yeah.
little bit. As I grew up, my parents taught me to respect people,
Yes.
people in general, but particularly people that are have authority over me. My mother prepped me before she sent me to school.
Hmm.
You know, you act like this is me. You
Yeah.
treat them
Hmm.
with the same
An
respect.
extension of your parents. Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think in today's society, part of that is missing.
Oh, yeah.
We've all heard the phrase, you have to earn my respect.
Yep.
And I really think, this is my personal belief, I really believe that is backwards.
Hmm.
I think everybody deserves respect until they prove otherwise.
Yep.
And the other thing that we need to remember, folks, and this applies to pastors as well as everybody else, but you can't look at somebody's life and base your thoughts on their life on 1 hour of their 50-year life.
Hmm.
Somebody may crumble at that particular hour, but their whole life is not about the time they stumbled.
Yep.
You
It's
know,
about when they got up.
it's about how they got up.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
about who was there to get them up.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think we need to be people that are more helping people up.
Well, and I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, that goes right back to this past Sunday sermon about I preached on, being compelled to be compassionate. We looked at how Jesus fed the 5,000. And I know a lot of people told me that was a different take than they're used to. Obviously, most people are going to pull out of that text, God has power to do anything. He fed 5,000 people. Yes, he did, but you also have to look at the first few verses in that text where the disciples said in verse 35, Jesus, leave them alone. Let's go home. Let them figure out. The disciples said, let them buy their own food. Jesus says, no, we have a need here. We're going to be compelled to be compassionate people. And I think it's hard for pastors and pastors' wives. We really appreciate the cards and the gift cards and the gifts. I mean, that is so nice, but it is so contradictory when we get a card, a nice card, and this has happened to me, a nice card one week, and then we did something or didn't do something or didn't meet expectations or whatever. 2 weeks later, we get a bad card. And I think that really messes with your head. If I can be honest for a second, you get that nice card, you get that gift, and then you don't act in a way that somebody wanted you to act, meaning you didn't meet their expectations or their wants or desires, because those probably didn't line up with God's wants and desires. And so you don't do exactly what they want you to do. And so the next week, you're at the bottom of the totem pole in their mind, and they give you a card to show that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard.
We have to remember that you face pretty much the same things we do. I think I can say this pretty easy. There's going to be times that, gosh, I'm going to fail you. I'm sure there's been many times since you've been here that you were a little disappointed in my answers or my participation in certain things. But, we as a congregation, we do need that encouragement, and we should be doing that with each other as well as our pastor. And I think over time, I don't really know how pastor appreciation got started,
I have no idea.
but I think over a period of time, it's easy and I think it's necessary for us to break from the norm. You talked about that being something that's an ongoing thing, but I think it's a time for us to reflect.
Yep. Well,
And
and I think you got to understand too. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I want to, and I didn't mean to give anybody a heart attack. I want to be here a long time. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think anybody can deny our church has had a lot of turnover, a lot of pastoral turnover. And I think the main reason for that, when you look historically, outside of myself and Bill Pauling in the last 50 years, I think all the pastors y'all have called in the last 50 years were 55 or older. And so they're getting close to that retirement or interim stage or whatever,
Right.
that God has for them after that. And so, and Terry Pound has told me before, the average tenure of a pastor here is 6.5 years historically. And that is not very long in the grand scheme of things. And so I think you have to also understand that you have the privilege, and I'm not talking about me here, I'm talking about pastors in general during October and all year, but especially in October, you have the ability to appreciate the man in the pulpit that you have right now. It's your responsibility and obligation to honor and appreciate him while you have him. If that makes sense. And like I said, I'm not saying I'm leaving next year. I won't be here next year. But don't have the mindset of, well, I'm not going to do anything this year. I mean, he'll be here next year, or he'll be here 2 years from now, or I gave something last year. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think people tend to take a lot for granted, not just pastors, but a lot in life in general. As this portion airs, and you were talking about the feeding of the 5,000 and Jesus having compassion on people. There's a great portion of our national population that's really suffering now.
Yes. Yes.
And this is an extremely timely message.
Hmm.
And we've been at this quite a while now. And so it's, again, to my amazement, that God has lined these events up to
Yep.
to really drive these messages home. In my terms of pastor appreciation, those are the kind of things that I can appreciate. And when I talk to God, it's just like, this is such an amazing timing and the insight that I believe, and I truly believe He's given you that to plan your messages. And so, it's just one of those things that always amazes me is to God's timing, and it just seems like that no matter how bad we as humans try to mess it up, He's always right there with what we need when we need it. So I think get into October and start winding October down. I think it's really important, guys, that we remember our pastor, remember that they are human just like us. They have some of the same worries. They have some of the same concerns. They look at them sometimes from a different perspective. And it's not always easy to, particularly when you preach like our pastor does through a book, you don't have the flexibility of skipping over stuff you don't really want to say. And so that can weigh heavily on people's hearts and minds. I think that is a often overlooked aspect of pastors' lives is the mental toll
Oh yeah.
that it takes.
And let me say that nobody will ever know the mental toll until you sit in my shoes
Right.
or put my shoes on. And let me go ahead and say something too. You got to appreciate the woman too. You got to appreciate the woman behind the man in the pulpit. She is just as important and valuable, if not more important and valuable. And let me go ahead and say something. When you say rude things to her, I know a lot of y'all don't think it gets back to me, but it does because that's my wife.
And the thing of it is that probably hurts her more
Oh, yeah.
than it does you anyway.
And especially when there are things said about her husband that are said to her when people try to get her to turn on me. I think that's a very deviant and evil thing to do.
I really couldn't agree with you more, and I really can't believe that. Well, I guess I can in today's society. It's hard to really wrap my head around somebody doing that. I don't know. I don't know another way to say that,
Yeah.
but it just seems like from time to time we all say stupid stuff. We
Oh,
all
yeah.
say stuff. We all say stuff in the heat of battle that
Oh, yeah. And I think it has to do with letting Satan get inside.
I agree.
I mean, he can oppress you, he can't possess you, but I'll go ahead and say this. There are many, and I'm talking Big C Church, there are many people that claim Christ that are not saved. And so a lot of the issues that we do have are because Satan is working through non-believers that claim to be believers but are not.
Hmm.
You got to think about that. So,
Well, I hope, as we begin to wrap this episode up, Pastor, I hope you know that I'll take this opportunity to say that I really appreciate the things you do. The times that I come by here and you're here, that your door's closed, that you don't ever know I come by. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the time that you spend here away from your family. Sherelle and I had a conversation last night about that feeling of security and how no matter what goes on in my life, if I can just get to her,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why, I just
Yeah.
feel better.
Yeah.
And so I know that feeling, and I know how it is to be away from your family. And we do appreciate you. We do appreciate the sacrifices that you make for our church, and more importantly, that you make for the kingdom.
Well, thank you, brother. I love serving here. I hope to be here a long time, but I'll never stop calling a spade a spade.
Well, I think that is, I think that's what the God has called pastors to do, and I think that so many of the pastors you see failing today are pastors that maybe doesn't do that so well.
I'd have to agree with you.
All righty, well, we appreciate you guys being with us today. This wraps up another episode in our series. It's hard to believe we've done this many.
We've done a lot. We've done a lot, and I think we're excited too. You know, I'm pretty in the thick of it as far as preaching plan and all of that, and you know, I am really excited for what we're going to be able to embark on next year in the podcast, and what we're going to be able to embark on next year as a church. I've already released this, but our word of the year for next year is going to be selfless. I truly believe as the under shepherd, God's going to take us through some things next year that we have never seen before. Obviously, the building program is a lot, but there's also going to be some staff things that are going to occur, hopefully, and some other things that we don't even know yet. And so I just think it's important that as we go through this to remember, if we want the next 200 years to be great, it starts in that first year, and it starts with being selfless.
And it's every year.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 37 of the Menorah Podcast. I hope you have a great October. Hope you have a great day. We will see you this coming Sunday at church. And as I said last week, if you root for the team at Garnet and Black, we've got Boomer Sooner this weekend, and go Gamecocks. Have a great weekend.